welcome everyone to this session of the European Commission Research and Innovation Days conference dedicated to repurposed production. My name is Patrick Child. I am Deputy Director General in DG Research and Innovation in the European Commission, and I will be your moderator today. And I'm very happy that we're going to have this opportunity to look at the lessons that we can take away from particularly the early stages of the COVID crisis, as our manufacturing industries, particularly in the health sector, responded swiftly and effectively to the new demands of the pandemic. But we also need to see what we can learn in terms of lessons of this response. So this session, under the overall sort of label of fast and flexible, will give us an opportunity to see what technologies we have already to enable to redesign our production capacities and our manufacturing facilities in response to urgent crises like the pandemic, but also what new technologies are under development, or what new technologies we can imagine for the future that would help us to be even more resilient and better prepared in future. And so joining me today in this panel, we have three very distinguished speakers. I'm very happy to introduce them to you now. So we have firstly Dr. Oscar Lazaro, who is a director of Innovalia, a technical manager of a Eureka 3 project funded under the European Union's Research and Innovation Framework Programme, Horizon 2020. Who is experimenting with these new technologies and really looking forward to hearing his experience. We also have Magda Chlebus, who is the Executive Director for Science Policy and Regulatory Affairs of the European Federation of Pharmaceutical Industries and Associations. And Magda, I think, will be excellently placed to help us understand the experience, in particular in the medical sector and the pharmaceutical industry, of the recent manufacturing challenges that we've all faced. And finally, we've got Professor Thomas Bauernhansel, who is Director of the Fraunhofer Institute, who will give us, I'm sure, a very illuminating perspective from one of our leading research organizations in the European Union. So really happy to have the three panelists with us. Before we kick off with some questions that I have for our distinguished speakers, just like to remind everyone who's watching that we will be giving you an opportunity to ask your questions through the Slido system. So while we go through our introductory discussion, please give your thought to the Slido questions that you'd like to ask, add them in the system, vote for other people's questions, and then we will come later in the session to see our responses. So to kick things off, I'd like to start by asking, I guess, the same question to each of our three speakers for their perspectives on the recent experiences that we've all had with the repurposing production and the response in our manufacturing sector, in our supply chains, to the challenges of responding to the urgent needs of the pandemic, particularly in the health sector. And I'd like to start with Dr. Lazaro, because as I say, he's been working directly with us on a Horizon 2020 project, and I'd therefore like to give him the opportunity to reply to the question, what, with the new technologies that we have available, can we already achieve, and what would you like to see us be able to achieve better in future in this important area? So Dr. Lazaro, please.
Thank you very much for the invitation today, and just coming directly into your question. I think so far we have seen that those companies and industries that have already invested in digital and in automation, they have been able to respond better to this type of crisis. And those companies that have relied on an open standard implementations of their manufacturing processes, they have been more effective in teaming up and effectively repurposing their production systems. However, I think for the future, we have just started to see what is ahead of us. And I think we need to understand that repurposing probably goes beyond these short-term arrangements that we have organized and see being established during the pandemics. And we need to think in terms of repurposing as a strategy to build resilience and to build on business sustainability for the future. However, I think we face still critical aspects to be solved in certification regulation and control of quality for our medical products, but generally for any other type of product that we would like to see being addressed by repurposing.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lazaro. I'd like now to come to Magda. Do you agree with that? I mean, is that your experience from the pharmaceutical and medical industries that you represent, that it's a question of preparedness in terms in particular of digital systems, automation, but also things that we need to look to the future in terms of strategies and the regulatory environment? Magda, please.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting us today. I think we could very broadly agree with a lot of what has been said and lessons learned, not just from vaccines, but also from what's going on other products like therapeutics, antibodies, monoclonal antibodies. I think this is true. The industry has entered very swiftly and efficiently into transforming ideas into products and bringing these technologies to the patients very, very quickly. So especially on vaccines and 4 platforms at the same time developed and brought into production, development and production very quickly. The data have been absolutely essential. And when we talk about manufacturing, it's not only the digitization of the manufacturing processes, but also having the data that would allow us to understand the demand and understand the supply. And all of that is really essential. So data, flow of data, all of that would be an essential component of that. In terms of antibodies or the new vaccines platforms, regulatory aspects for sure need to be looked at, but also some consistency in European policies. For example, when we talk about manufacturing of antibodies, I think we really need to look at what are the potential barriers, not only in regulatory, but in the legislation in general, in order to facilitate fast approval and then fast adaptation of through the regulatory process of manufacturing facilities that can manufacture those in the future.
Great, thanks, Magda. So, Thomas, over to you. From the perspective of Fraunhofer, what do you see as the best available technologies and response strategies that we have, whether in the medical bio sector or more widely, and what do we need to do in future to improve our capacity? Thomas.
Yeah, when we have a look at the actual situation, the question is, where do we have the disruptions, real disruptions in the supply chain? And at the beginning, it was in the area of the medicinal products, then in the field of the computer chips, especially in the automotive industry. And now we see as well shortages in raw materials like plastic, steel, and woods. And when you look at the reasons, one reason is that we have global supply chains, and we are not really able to make these global supply chains transparent. So we cannot really predict the market, and as well, we are not able to predict our real capacities. And in many cases, we have some hidden and very risky single sources, especially when we talk about computer chips, for example. That was one issue. I think you all know that. And on the other hand, we see also national interests, national policy, America first, China first, and so on. I don't want to discuss that in detail. But when we really want to improve things, I think the first step is really to bring more transparency into the supply chains. That could be a short-term or mid-term action with the help of platforms, with the help of real-time communication, with the help of cyber-physical systems. These are the topics and the technologies we can use. When we look more with a mid and long range perspective, I think we have to really more regionalize production. We need regional supply systems. For sure, we need fully digitized value chains which are able to integrate in a digital manner as well the customers. And we need more regional circular economy systems, more renewable materials, and as well some new production methods, like from the organizational point of view in the automotive industry, we see now more and more so-called matrix production systems. So we get more or less rid of the very unflexible production lines. Concerning flexibility, we see more and more possibilities of additive manufacturing. And finally, when we talk about sustainability and resilience, we talk more and more about so-called bio-intelligent production systems. And that means that we bring bioware, hardware, and software together in one architecture, and we use that to produce decentrally with local resources, with renewable materials, and we use the possibilities of artificial intelligence and biotechnology in order to produce on demand. So that means finally we should, with the long-term perspective, really should synchronize the digital and the biological transformation in order to achieve highly sustainable and very resilient supply systems in Europe for Europe.
Thomas, thanks very much. A very complete and comprehensive answer, and I think illustrates very well that there are many, many different sort of interrelated challenges, whether it's the sort of integrated supply chains, international competitiveness, or other opportunities from new technologies. But I'd like now to come to a second round of questions, more targeted on each of our speakers, and start again with you, if I may, Oscar. As I said, you are working with us on a specific project following our recent call for proposals in this area. And I'd like to hear perhaps a little bit more about what your project contains, what you're hoping to achieve, and what, more generally, your experience of working with the European Commission as a sort of funding organization has been like in this very high-pressure, fast-moving environment that we're all facing at the moment.
Thank you for the question, and I think the answer is quite straightforward. And I would start from the final point. Actually, the support of the Commission has been instrumental in making a team of companies and research centers to come together to provide a comprehensive and coordinated response to the COVID challenge. Now, trying to dig down in terms of what we are trying to achieve and what are the main challenges and lines of actions that we are implementing in this project. I cannot agree more with the previous speakers that they have enriched my initial view that we have ahead of us a coordination and a collaboration challenge, and how we become better prepared and coordinated for future response to this type of pandemic or value network disruption. It is not something that can be done only during pandemics, and this is precisely what we are working in Eureka. It is actually bringing together the community and the plug and response network that is ready to become active under the need of repurposing. This means that we need to work, as I mentioned, on the manufacturing capabilities of the production. So we have to look into how we can make our systems more flexible, more digital, more automated. But we should not forget that the bottlenecks that we have identified during the pandemics are focused on the lack of skills. People were not prepared to repurpose and to collaborate across sectors. So there is a skill gap and a need for training and preparedness in this respect. And for this, actually, we are introducing a concept in Eureka, what we call business proximity. We understand that this type of arrangements that we have seen during the pandemics, when we are starting to perform our research, we have realized that sectors that were in the near proximity in terms of technical maturity, skills, knowledge, and digital maturity, they were successful in establishing repurposing manufacturing activities. For these very same reasons, what we are trying to facilitate through our activities is this integrated global manufacturing response platform. And in collaboration with the World Economic Forum, we are ready to engage the advanced manufacturing community into a public-private partnership. With our project, we should not only put the basic technical pillars for future manufacturing repurposing, but we should also set up the pillars for future collaboration and coordination across public stakeholders. With this type of activity, what we are realizing is that one of the big lessons that we learned during COVID-19 that was that no single company or country could really beat this global challenge, we should learn from this lesson. We should be prepared during crisis. We should know which are the partners that are ready to engage with us in this type of collaborations in order to keep our economies and societies protected. We need to understand that this is not just a high-tech collaboration game. It is a high-tech and low-tech industry collaboration challenge. We have seen that during the COVID, some of the shortages in terms of responding to future demands and to the vaccine challenge has been faced not in the high-tech industry, but in ancillary elements like different products that could help the distribution of these solutions. So it is really something that we have to think on strategic terms, something that we have to think in terms of federation, not centralization of efforts, and something that calls for a strategic long-term thinking and a strategic public-private co-investment. It is not just one side of the coin that has to embrace repurposing. It has to be a collective effort. And we should intensify dialogue with the pharma sector. The pharmaceutical sector now possesses immense knowledge about how to establish successful repurposing strategies. This we are seeing day by day in the Eureka project. Actually, through learning that are gained by the pharma industry, we are able to generalize and propose more general long-term strategies.
Great. Thanks very much, Oscar. And I mean, I think you gave a very good link into my next question, which is going to be for Magda, which is indeed, what can we sort of draw from the past experience, the crisis, in terms of, what we think about the expected future trends and challenges, particularly in the pharmaceutical industry. What can the pharmaceutical industry and the responses that you've been able to develop bring to the broader manufacturing sector production capacities across the European Union in the way that Oscar has indicated? And coming back to something you said in your introductory remarks as well, I mean, what do we need to be thinking about in terms of the regulatory environment, including possibly legislation, as you said, and intellectual property in order to empower our manufacturing sectors to seize the opportunities that we all see here of repurposing production?
Yes, thank you. I think, first of all, I really do agree wholeheartedly that nobody alone can resolve that problem, neither in times of crisis nor in times of peace. If we really want to accelerate, especially the implementation of new technologies and make them reality, there is a need for collaboration and generation of body of evidence and practices together, because neither the academic nor the industry sector or the regulators alone and in isolation can actually have it right. So partnership for me as well and for our sector is one of the first conditions. And I should say we have in Europe a very long tradition of public-private collaborations and pushing the boundaries of pre-competitive and competitive collaborations, doing something that maybe no other regions were doing. So I think we have a culture of collaboration on which we can build. In the past, the Innovative Medicines Initiative, in the future, the Innovative Health Initiative, what Eureka does, all of that means that public and private partners can work much more than was the case in the past. And this is a condition sine qua non. The second point, beyond collaboration, and the word was also said, it's global. Europe would be much stronger if strong in a global and well-connected world. So we cannot do things in isolation. We need to see the supply chains, the manufacturing chains as part of a global and open flow. So I think this is really important that we maintain that global and open flow and open trade, because that is also part of our own sustainability and resilience. And then the next point is around regulatory optimization, and I would come to some other challenges in the later parts of today's conversation. I really think that it is not about the legislation per se, rather about the practice and how quickly, through a dialogue, scientific advice, and continued dialogue that was mentioned before, we can change and adapt the practice and make sure that these new technologies can really become reality. It is the time that it's needed to assess them. It is the time that it's needed to, for example, qualify the manufacturing sites, etc. I think if we can remove some of these barriers, then companies and academia and others can enter into collaborations. And we had seen more than 200 deals to facilitate manufacturing of much needed vaccines and products now in the COVID crisis. So all of that can be done, but can be facilitated through acceleration of some of these processes. Last point about the data. We can only be effective if we understand the demand and the needs. So better exploitation of the current digital means, data and data flows would be very important for us to be more effective in the future.
Great. Thank you very much, Magda. And I'd like now to come back to Thomas. And perhaps just sort of thinking about the wide-ranging comments that he made in response to my first question, perhaps to see whether you could focus in on more specifically the sort of support or inputs that we can expect from leading research organizations like yours to accelerate the pace of change and to facilitate the sort of transitions that we've been talking about.
Yeah, I already started to talk about the biological transformation. Yeah, we all talk in the moment about digital tools, digital transformation, but I think we see in the moment as well the biological transformation, and this will lead to completely new system architectures. In the digital transformation showed us that cyber-physical systems will be the future, like our smartphones, for example, which we use, and we now we try to transfer this architecture to all other mechatronical systems, like cars, for example. Talk about operating systems for cars and electrification, digitization, and. But when we look at the actual developments, especially in the health sector, pharmaceutical industry, in the food nutrition sector, we see that the merge of software and hardware is followed by the BioWare, which we as well integrate into one new system architecture. And this is the new innovation space, which will be opened in the next years, and which will offer us completely new opportunities. I give you some examples. When you look at CAR T-cell therapies for personalized cancer therapies, like we have this big trend of ATMPs, in that area we use completely new biotechnology platforms combined with digital tools. And the next step is now to automate these personalized production of these personalized therapies to bring down the costs. And when we in Europe are able now to innovate in that sector and to develop the technology, the production technology, the automation for these kind of therapies in the field of the ATMPs, so for cell, gene, and tissue therapies, which are the most advanced therapies with the biggest opportunities for us in the next years, I think that can really make the difference, and that give us the competitive edge in that area, which we need to bring back production to Europe, and as well to create new technologies which we can also export to other countries. And that is only one example. We see the same development, as I mentioned, in the nutrition area. We try to substitute meat with the help of these bio-intelligent production systems, especially in the United States. We see a lot of developments in that area, like Impossible Food, for example. And this has as well a highly impact on the sustainability of our production systems. In that case, we can reduce, for example, CO2 by 90%, water by more than 87%, and also land occupation by 96%. So these are the tools we need to achieve, on one hand, a very sustainable production in Europe, but on the other hand, which opens us a possibility, a new innovation space to really achieve very advanced systems, which gives us as well a global competitive edge. It's not only bringing back production to Europe. We have to be really good and excellent in order to survive in this hard global competition. So the competitive edge and the technology-based answer is very important in that game.
Thank you very much. Thomas, you really open on some quite exciting and challenging sort of future trends. I mean, this idea of the biointelligence transition, the cyber-physical systems, and the opportunities that they will potentially offer us to respond to global challenges like climate change. I mean, Magda, can I just come back to you briefly before we open up for the more general questions? I mean, are these topics, are these issues things that resonate among your members? Are these things that are being actively explored and tested in the industries that you represent, or is this still a little bit sort of in the future?
Well, some of it is the question of very near future. Other things are being already actively explored. Companies, especially those that are doing, like our members, research new novel products, are also innovating with production. So definitely this is something that is happening as we speak. I think we really looking into the future. Not only about repurposing of facilities for addressing emergencies, but also creating this environment that it's conducive for investments into manufacturing of future advanced products and making what has been just said a reality. We need to look at three types of innovations. We need to look at the technology innovation, and it was said some of the technologies require years of investments, and mRNA didn't happen overnight. It was years of investments that led into fast transition into new products, and same holds true for other technologies. So we need to have a continued investment into those technologies of the future and make sure that digitization, the combination of digital and biology, technology and biology is happening. All of that requires continued investment. The second is the regulatory modernization. And it's, as I said, more modernization of the practice than modernization of the law. We need to have that culture of talking together in order to translate very quickly to allow adaptations of methods of production. If we talk about fast adaptation and flexible manufacturing, that also means that we need to have a way to very quickly do the post-approval changes, for example. So some of these regulatory processes need to be much faster. The last is more a process innovation, and it is how to offset the cost of these new technologies in the future, how to attract, how to facilitate the green transition, the other technological transitions. All of that needs to be considered. And you've mentioned the words IP before. We think that really a strong IP would also help bringing all innovations research into Europe as well. This is not a barrier to manufacturing or innovation. This is, on the other hand, the facilitator and enabler of doing that.
Great, thank you very much indeed. Well, look, now we've got a few questions coming in, and I think I'd like to pick up the first question, which is about the scope for cross-sectoral innovation to play a bigger role in flexible manufacturing, and whether we need an adaptation in our policy framework in order to support and facilitate that. And I think that comes back to something that in particular Oscar said a little bit earlier on about the need to reach beyond sort of traditional silos and promote intersectoral cooperation. So Oscar, I don't know whether you would like to share a little bit your experience in this area or your ideas on how the policy environment that we are trying to shape could be improved in this respect.
I thank you very much for this question, since it maybe allow me to very briefly bring 2 points forward. The first one is that indeed I think this is a trend that we should cultivate and elaborate in the future, but keeping in mind that this cross-sectorial collaboration in manufacturing should respect a very difficult balance to achieve between cost effectiveness, sustainability, and high availability of these rapid response networks that we are aiming at. And I think the issue of digital and data sovereignty and access to federated and sovereign digital infrastructures like the ones that these Gaia X or IDSA technologies are providing and piloting these days could really contribute to implement something like that. This is something that we are testing and we are elaborating further in the Eureka project, but this cross-sectorial collaboration and the business proximity that I mentioned before, it is not a European issue. It is something that at the moment is a global issue, and that the global manufacturing community is happy to engage in collaboration, and Europe should lead this dialogue.
Great, thanks, Oscar. And I'd like to come back in a minute, indeed, to the international dimension, because we have a question about that. But before I do that, Magda or Thomas, would you like to add on this question of the importance or the opportunities of promoting collaboration and sort of cross-fertilization of techniques and between different sectors? Maybe Magda first, from your perspective.
Thank you. It is really essential. And by the way, that's why the new partnerships that are being created at European level are cross-sectorial, because we need to bring together different technologies. And up to now, they were evolving in their own legal, legislative, regulatory silos. Bringing that together, it's not trivial. It's a bigger challenge than it seems. But every sector is ready for that. And we see that technology sectors, health research sectors are ready for that cross-fertilization, as was said. So absolutely, it is very important.
Thanks, Magda. Thomas, a word on this point?
Yeah, from a research perspective, it's absolutely relevant to have, on one hand, a systemic view, and on the other hand, to bring the different disciplines together. And this is still, also we are talking about that for decades. It's still really difficult to bring the different research disciplines together. And it's still as well very difficult to bring the different industry sectors together. So especially when we talk about the transformation process, when we talk about bringing research results into the market, we have these two challenges. Yeah? On one hand, bringing the research disciplines together. On the other hand, bringing different industry sectors together in order to create, with a systemic view, completely new solutions. Which really work then in manufacturing. And this is the basic challenge, really the basic challenge.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, but then, I suppose the question is, if you had a magic wand, and, the other colleagues can answer as well, but Thomas, if you had a magic wand, what would you do in order to promote that sort of change? How would you foster or create incentives for this interdisciplinary, intersector collaboration? How can we make it happen?
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm not able to really offer you a kind of magic trick for that. The only thing I can recommend is to foster communication. Yeah. And to try to find a common vocabulary and to foster communication. Yeah? Whenever it's possible, communicate, bring the different disciplines together, and policy has to create the right framework for that. But communication is key, international communication is key, bringing the people together and creating visions, real visions, which are motivating for the different sectors and for research to really bring their capabilities and their views together and to create unique and advanced solutions.
Great. Well, look, let's move on. And as I wanted to develop a little bit more our discussion on international collaboration. And I guess that when we talk about international collaboration, we're talking about international collaboration within the European Union, with the associated countries that are participating also in our Research and Innovation Framework Programme, but also global collaboration and international engagements, taking account not only of the necessary opportunities as we continue to develop global level supply chains, but also the increasingly sensitive sort of commercial and sort of competitive dimension that can come in, particularly when we're talking about some of these cutting edge technologies which present really major economic and commercial opportunities. I mean, I'm interested to hear all of you on the sort of opportunities for global collaboration on sort of making more fast and flexible manufacturing systems, but also some of the things that maybe hold us back. And Magda, I mean, I'd like to start with you because, perhaps your industry, your sector has been most exposed in the last months to the challenges of the same time of meeting national and domestic demand, but also responding to a broader international debate. So what would be your thoughts on this point?
Well, I think the global dimension for global companies is absolutely essential. And as I've said before, Europe would be stronger in a global world where there is a flow of everything, of data, of products, etc. I think that no region can really do it alone, all of that. So we would rely on a strong and connected global ecosystem. So I think for us, this global dimension is very important. I would say that there are also some other aspects of globalization, like convergence of regulatory requirements or convergence of environmental requirements. All of that is very important. For example, if we have to retest every batch of products several times, and we cannot rely on this batch release of the same batch of products in one region, that creates unnecessary cost delays, etc. If we cannot move around clinical trials products, then we cannot do the clinical trials. So all of that is really important, and especially this convergence of regulatory requirements is an important element. It would greatly facilitate things for our sector.
Thanks very much, Magda. Oscar, can I throw the same question to you? I mean, how do you see the international collaboration dimension, whether at a European level or globally, and the sort of commercial considerations that might sort of hold things back, as well as the very real issues of regulatory and standardization alignment that Magda's so rightly highlighted?
Yeah, I think I agree very much with Magda's view that this issue of cooperation as everything that we have to face is a matter of perspective, and probably if we ask different stakeholders, they will understand or they will have different motivations for these international cooperations. What we can share from our early engagement in the context of the Manufacturing Global Response Initiative that we are initiating from the Eureka project in cooperation with the World Economic Forum is that in any case, it doesn't matter if you are trying to make your region more resilient, or you are trying to make your industry more resilient and trying to optimize cost and availability. It is not something that you can implement alone. Mm-hmm. So this global cooperation, either when you make this strategic decision, is based on partnership, is based on things that are highly connected and are highly dependent. We cannot duplicate resources. We live in a world that is more and more scarce on resources, call it raw materials, call it any type of resource. So we cannot waste effort or resources. And that is why global collaboration is actually critical. Even in the future case of a disruption, we should expect that this maybe hits one part of the globe, hopefully not globally, as we had to suffer with COVID. So this global cooperation is essential to make sure that irrespective where disruption takes place, we can still react. And it doesn't need to be a medical one. I think the colleagues from Fraunhofer, they were already highlighting issues, different type of disruptions in the semiconductor industry. We are going to face more and more these situations, so we cannot afford not to have this global collaboration.
Great, thanks, Oscar. Thomas, I mean, if I guess we all agree with what both Magda and Oscar said. I mean, I make the question challenging for you again. If we all agree that we need more international collaboration, how do we do it? What do we do to promote it in a way which also enables us to protect the sort of vital commercial interests and opportunities in the European Union?
Yeah, I think we have to differ between what international cooperation in Europe and maybe international cooperation with other regions, maybe like China, United States, and when you look at that level of cooperation, I think it's very important that we have something to share, which is of interest for our partners. So when we talk about cooperation, that means we share knowledge. And that means we have to share some IP, and so intellectual property. And so for us, it's very vital, I think, and very important to focus really on specific areas of IP and technology. We cannot cover everything, but we can develop in specific areas where we have maybe the better prerequisites. We can focus on technologies and develop IP in that sectors. And then in cooperation, I think then it's easier for us. We can offer something which is important and we get something back which is important for us. And then cooperation usually works. So my recommendation would be to really focus on some specific technologies. For example, we could focus on IT security topics. So we can focus on specific artificial intelligence methods which are ethic-based, for example. Yeah, we can focus on biotech and maybe the conversion of biotech and artificial intelligence. So there are many fields, technology fields, I think, where we have excellent possibilities. And when we have IP in that sectors and this IP is really advanced, I think then with a long-term perspective, cooperation will be easier.
Great, thank you. Well, I think that we've had some good discussions on, what we respectively see as the perspective of industry, research organizations, companies, public authorities. But we've got a challenging question now, which is, what do we see as the potential role of civil society? And perhaps beyond that, how do we better connect with the expectations and needs of our citizens? I mean, we've had a crisis which has had profound implications for the way that we all live and work, and we're all sort of struggling to emerge from that. Can civil society play a useful role in supporting and accompanying the acceptance of these new reproduction techniques in our manufacturing sector, and what do we need to do in order to engage better with civil society in that respect? And this will be our last round of questions, so if you've got any final thoughts, you can add them as well. Magda, I'd like to start with you on this question. What can we do with civil society even better than we're doing today?
Well, with civil society and the patients' communities in general, I think we need to understand what are their expectations vis-a-vis how do they want to have their products, what kind of products do they need, where do they actually take their products from, is it at hospital, at home? I think these are very important considerations. Are they ready to share their data? Are they ready to provide the information that would inform the manufacturing processes and their quick adaptations in the future? What are their expectations? I think this is important, and this dialogue should happen. It should be engaged in any type of collaboration, in any types of projects at European level and elsewhere. Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you. No, I'm cutting you off because I'm seeing the time. But Oscar, a word from you on this civil society question.
Yeah, only one very quick statement on this. Civil society and our human dimension should be at the center of repurposing. We have to realize that during this crisis, we have been able to support to the best of our capabilities the health of our civil society, but we have maybe failed to protect at the same level their economical aspects. They have been limited in terms of business continuity, access to their day-to-day operation, and access to work. How manufacturing technologies, repurposing, can ensure that in the future we have for the manufacturing sector the same type of capabilities that we have seen for office or third sector type of jobs. I think it is also crucial to ensure not only health, but also the economy of our civil society.
Oscar, thanks. Great. A final word for you, and probably just 20 seconds, Thomas.
Yeah, from my point of view, the good news is that during the crisis we have seen in the last 1.5 years, I think the society rely more and more on science and the results on science. And now, post-crisis now, for us it's important to really offer a vision which is motivating for most of the people here in Europe. Like, we have to focus on ethical aspects, we have to focus on economic aspects as well, and on sustainability aspects. And when we are able to create a vision for manufacturing which is now covering all these aspects, I think we have a very good opportunity to motivate our society to be part of this transformation and to support this transformation.
Thomas, thank you very much, and sorry to cut you short, but I mean, for me, this has been an absolutely fascinating discussion and a really optimistic discussion for the future in terms of equipping European manufacturing capacity with the sort of repurposing capacity to respond even better in future to the sort of crises that the pandemic has shown. So I'd like, in the few seconds remaining, to thank our three panelists. Thanks to Magda, to Oscar and Thomas. Thanks also for the audience for listening, and enjoy the rest of the Research and Innovation Days conference. Thank you.